You just have to show up, you know? You don't have to worry about the poses, you don't have to worry about the breathing, you don't have to worry about the transformation, you don't have to worry about the inner world. You just have to show up every day at 7 in the morning. Half an hour after I got to the hospital, my system collapsed, my heart stopped, I died. And they had to bring me back. You know, people that I've met from all over the world just helped and called me and sent me so many beautiful messages that I'm so grateful for. I've never, ever, ever experienced so much love in my life. I didn't even know that I was loved from so many people that I've met in my travels in my life. It was such a beautiful and healing experience.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am with Mannu. Mannu is a strong Ashtanga Yoga teacher on the island, very well known for his teachings, and I'm very excited to have a chat with you today, Mannu.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you for welcoming me in your house. Very good.
Very nice. So Ashtanga is a well-known practice in yoga, very well established, and one of the most powerful in some ways. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into Ashtanga?
When I was graduating for university, I used to work for Merrill Lynch. I used to be an investment banker when I was very young. After that, I really hated what I was doing. I did it only for a couple of years, and I went traveling. I had the opportunity to go to Germany to work in a world exposition for a few months, and I never came back. I moved to London after that, and the truth is that I wasn't really happy with my life. I wasn't really happy with the options that the world was offering me, and the most alternative lifestyle that a little boy from Mexico City knew was working in bars, you know? So I got into the bars and nightclub industry for more than 10 years. I was a bartender, I was a dishwasher, I was a waiter, I was a bar manager, I was a general manager. I ended up owning a few bars and clubs. And in the space of less than 1 year, I lost my girlfriend, I lost my job, I lost my money. I ended up being stuck in Mexico City at the age of 34, living with my parents, and I was just doing a little bit of yoga here and there, until eventually someone told me about Ashtanga, and I read about this practice, and it's a very, I don't like to use the word serious, but it's a dedicated path, you know? And if you really commit to it, it just gives you so much. And I like the idea of silence, even though you know, I was involved in this finance world and the crazy bar industry and all of this stuff. The truth is that I always wanted to study philosophy, and I was always very interested in Eastern philosophies. So Ashtanga just kind of ticked all the right boxes for me, and yeah, it was beautiful. It was very beautiful.
Very nice. You know, I've been to India many times. I've been to Mysore as well, and I see indeed how the practitioners in Mysore take the Ashtanga practice very seriously, right? And indeed, there is some sort of like very sobering, very grounding element in Ashtanga compared to some of the tantric practices we do here, which is also beautiful, obviously. They tend to, like, you know, spike the energy up a little bit. Whereas with Ashtanga, I practice it a little bit, not so much, to be very honest. But of course, I have friends that do it, and I know that it's a very grounding practice. You know, it brings you back to the roots in some ways.
It's very profound, yes.
Very nice indeed. And it's the way many practitioners take it is very dedicated, as you said. So like you teach it on the island 7 in the morning, is that right?
Yes, that's right. So one of the beautiful things about this practice is that you know, some people believe that it's very rigid and it's very strict. The way I like to see it is that this practice just gives you a very defined frame. You know, we practice 6 days a week. We practice early in the morning so that nothing else gets in the way and we can actually just do it. We follow one sequence that we all have to learn the same poses, the same amount of breath. Every movement and every breath is already accounted for. But the truth is that within this frame that the practice presents to us, there's a lot of space for individuality and creativity and expression, and it's beautiful, you know. You just have to show up, you know. You don't have to worry about the poses, you don't have to worry about the breathing, you don't have to worry about the transformation, you don't have to worry about the inner world. You just have to show up every day at 7 in the morning. And then you start changing all these little things, not because you're focused on changing anything, just because you're focusing on doing this practice every day. And it's really magical. It really transformed my life in this way. And just it's just a practice that you just have to show up, as I said, and the gifts just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. It's incredible.
I hear you indeed. I think there is a lot to be said about having a discipline or some sort of practice that you do on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Because it's a way for you to start the day in a certain way.
You know, every day you wake up and you have a shower and you wash your body and you wash your mouth and you do all of this stuff. In the same way, every day that we show up for practice is like waking up and having a shower for your spirit. You know, if you do it with the rest of yourself, why not do it with the inner and most important part of yourself, right? I sometimes laugh when people talk about the connection between the body and the mind and the spirit and all of this stuff. Or, you know, many people like to say that when you do yoga, you're working in uniting all these three elements. And I say, well, how can you unite anything that can never be separated? Because the body, the mind, and the spirit, they're just one thing. You know, one of my most loved teachers, Ian Greisak, he lives in Bali. He always says that he wants to write a book called "I'm Only Here for the Asana." You know, because everybody's always thinking about transcending the mind and transcending the this, and the body is not important, and this is, and I'm like, no, we are a body just as much as we are a soul, just as much as we are a mind. You know, our whole body is our mind. If it's not for our organs of sensations that send signals to the brain, there's no mind. And if it's not for our feelings and our emotions and our spiritual experiences, there is no body, and everything is connected and everything is just one thing. And the beautiful thing is that we can access our spirit through our body in the same way that whatever happens to us in the spiritual level actually happens to us in the physical level. And it affects the minds, and our thoughts affects our biology and our et cetera, et cetera. There's no division. There's no separation. We want to get rid of the idea of separation, but there's no separation to get rid of, really.
What do you think of the ego, in particular with regards to the Ashtanga practice? Because some friends of mine that do Ashtanga, they say, you know, Ashtanga is you keep on doing the same postures until you reach near perfection. And in that kind of element of trying to be so perfect, there is some egotic kind of element to it. But, you know, is the ego bad or good, or what's your view of it?
You know, I think this is one of these beautiful things about this practice as well. That's a very good question. I'm going to frame it in a different way for you. To me, the first and most beautiful gift that this practice gave me was what I call a sense of possibility. And by this, what I mean is, you know, this practice is very physically demanding, like you say. At some points it can look very acrobatic and very gymnastic in a way. And when you first come to a Mysore room and you start seeing people with more years of experience practice, sometimes, many times, you look at them and you're like, wow, I'm never going to be able to do this, right? But then you realize that after a few weeks or months of practice, this thing that you thought you were never going to do, you're just doing it. You know, but then there comes the next pose, and then there comes the next pose, and then there comes the next series. So in the Ashtanga is a very beautiful practice in the way that you can achieve these things that you never thought were possible. And yes, you can believe now I'm a Superman because I can do this thing, but then comes another pose that you cannot do. And there comes another series. One of my students told me a couple of days ago something really beautiful. She said, the thing with Ashtanga is that when it seems easy, it can always get more difficult. And when it becomes difficult, eventually it will become easy. And it's just like a framing and reframing, and every time you got something, you know, you can expand your horizons and move into that space, and it's really beautiful in this way.
Manu, how long you've been coming to Koh Phangan?
I came here for the first time at the end of 2014. I was invited by one of the healing centers. They used to have a Mysore program. That's what we call the Ashtanga classes. And they used to change their teachers every month, which is not a very good practice, especially for a practice like Ashtanga, when you require sometimes, not sometimes, but always years of dedicated practice and hopefully under one same teacher. But it was a very good experience for me. In that time, I had been assisting my teachers for many years because in the traditional way of learning Ashtanga, we don't have 200 hours or 500 hours teachers trainings. Actually, I don't believe in these things at all. The only way of becoming a teacher in this lineage is after many years of practice. Once you master the practice, you start assisting your teacher and you learn to teach from him, but you already know the practice. As opposed to going to a 200 hours training with no experience and trying to learn the practice there. You learn to teach what you already know by helping your teacher for many years. So I had been assisting my teacher in Bali for a couple of years, and I had this opportunity to come teach here, and it seemed like a good idea to try myself out without my teacher look over my shoulder, etc. And I just fell in love with the island. Back 6 years ago, the island was very different to what it is today. Sure. There was a lot less people. The west of the island had a more dedicated spiritual community, even if we had some issues with, that's not worth talking about. But there was a lot of seeking and there was a lot of peace, but mostly one of the things that I love the most in my life and my favorite and most powerful practice, like you were telling me before, is spending time alone in nature. I always say, forget about yoga, forget about Qigong, forget about meditation, forget about whatever you want. If you really want to learn something, go into nature, go alone, spend a long time there, shut up and listen. And that's the great practice. And in this island, even today, you can grab your little scooter, your motorbike, and drive 5 minutes and park wherever you want and just walk into the jungle and be alone. And that's a privilege that most people in this world can't even imagine.
I know that recently you suffered some physical ailment, which was very serious.
Yes. If you want, I can share a little bit about this. Because it was a very powerful experience. So, in what happened to me last year, exactly a year ago, I contracted dengue, which is a very common disease here in the tropics, right? It just comes from a mosquito bite. I had the really bad luck that because my immune system was compromised with the dengue, a little cut that I had in my foot got infected. And obviously there was no way of me from telling whether this fever that I had was from the dengue or from an infection that I didn't know I had. So there's really not much you can do when you have dengue. You just have to wait for it to pass. It's And but I was at home with this very high fever. I think the dengue must have finished at some point, but I still had this fever and I was feeling terrible, and I just didn't know that it was because this bacterial infection actually got into my bloodstream. This is called septicemia.
Yeah.
So by the time they put me in the hospital, it was almost too late. I had to be sent to the neighboring island because they have a bigger hospital. Half an hour after I got to the hospital, my system collapsed, my heart stopped, I died, and they had to bring me back. It was a crazy experience. Unfortunately, I didn't have any kind of health insurance, and the hospital bills were really high. And my family had to set up one of these campaigns. And it was really beautiful to see the community come together, and people that I've met from all over the world just helped and called me and sent me so many beautiful messages that I'm so grateful for. I've never ever experienced so much love in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that I was loved from so many people that I've met in my travels in my life. It was such a beautiful and healing experience. The funny part is that the story doesn't even end there. But a few months after this, I went for a checkup, and the doctors realized that this same bacterial infection had pretty much destroyed one of the valves in my heart, and basically I was a walking dead man. Any moment I could have just dropped dead when this happened, and the story had to repeat itself. I had to ask for money for a second time. It was very difficult. And I had to receive an open heart surgery to heal my heart. I don't wish this to anyone, but on the other hand, I am very, 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 very grateful that this happened to me, because wow, you know, when you actually die, and when you're at risk of dying, everything changes, you know. When they told me that I needed this operation and that my life was completely at risk, you know, the mind immediately starts thinking about all the things that maybe you need to do and this and that, and and then you realize, well, why am I worried about any of this stuff if I'm pretty much dead, you know? And then, you know, you realize there's so many things that we think are so important and we worry about and we concern about, even when they tell you that you're dying, and none of it is. You know, there's really only a couple of things that really, really, really matter in life, and I would say, first of all, is life itself, being alive and enjoying life as it is. And second of all, this, you know, I don't know where this consciousness comes from, but this consciousness gives us the opportunity of loving and connecting and sharing our beings, and that's all that matters. Apart from that, everything else we can do away with. I was going through an internal storm of knowing that my life was at risk, right? So it was very interesting to realize, wow, you know, I really have to pull out the toolbox of everything I've been learning in my life, everything, all the practices that I've done, all my learnings, all my love, all my discipline. This is when I really needed it, all of this stuff, I suppose. I could, especially when my heart stopped and I had to be resuscitated. You know, there's really a beautiful point where I can only describe it like you imagine you're driving in your car, and all of a sudden the car starts going like that, and you know, somehow it's still going, and all of a sudden you see a little red light here and a yellow light over there, and then all of a sudden all the lights are on and you don't know what's going on, and I could really feel, wow, you know, this body is failing, and this body is probably not going to make it, but something deep inside, right in the center, I was feeling good.
Wow, it's very cool what you're saying. You know, the experience you went through, I can see, is like it's very meaningful to you indeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's something quite extraordinary. And as you said, I think the response from the community here in Koh Phangan and around the world was very, very loving. Thank you very much for this little chat today. It's been very interesting getting to know you a little bit better.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.